He pretended to be blind for weeks, just to watch his wife raise another man's children and plan his death. This blind man smiled every morning, while secretly watching his wife plan his murder on hidden cameras. But the moment she poisoned his tea, he did something that froze the room. In the ancient wisdom of our African ancestors, there exists a proverb that every elder whispers but few truly understand. The hand that rocks the cradle can also poison the well. This is not just another African love story. This is a traditional African tale of betrayal so devastating, it will make you question everyone you trust. This is the story of Chief Adebayo Okonkwo, a powerful Nigerian businessman who pretended to go blind to expose his wife's darkest secrets. What he discovered didn't just destroy his marriage. It shattered his entire bloodline. This African folktale carries a moral lesson so profound, our elders say it should be whispered, never spoken aloud. But today you will hear it all. Welcome to the most shocking African storytelling experience you will ever witness. Hello, family and besties. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 100 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Please subscribe to Lifetales by Sally, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. You know, there is something deeply painful about loving someone who is only counting down the days until you are gone. And the worst part, you have absolutely no idea they are doing it. This African legend begins in the bustling heart of Lagos, Nigeria, where ancient Yoruba traditions collide with modern wealth, where traditional African values battle against contemporary greed, and where one man's trust would become his greatest weakness. Chief Adebayo Okonkwo was 65 years old. Not the kind of 65 that comes with weakness or regret. No, this was the kind of 65 that came with power, influence, and enough money to make problems disappear with a single phone call. The kind of authority our African ancestors wielded when they ruled kingdoms before colonization, when chiefs were gods among men. He owned properties stretching from Lekki Phase 1 in Lagos all the way to the presidential estates of Abuja. His fleet of luxury vehicles, Range Rovers, Mercedes-Benz, and a custom Rolls-Royce Phantom, made young men stop mid-stride just to stare with jaws dropped in reverence. His mansion in Banana Island could host an entire village, with 24 bedrooms, marble imported from South Africa, and gold fixtures that caught the Nigerian sun like ancient treasures from the kingdoms of old. People did not just respect Chief Adebayo. They feared him in the way you fear someone who could change your entire life trajectory with one word. One phone call to the right person, and your business would flourish. One phone call to the wrong person, and your entire family would disappear into poverty. This was the kind of power that echoed the great African rulers of the past. The Mansa Musas, the Shaka Zulus, the Oyo Empire kings whose very names commanded armies. But here is the thing about power that every African folktale teaches us, that every proverb warns us about, that every wise elder tries to explain to young men drunk on their own success. Power cannot buy you loyalty, and it definitely cannot make someone love you when all they see is your bank account. Chief Adebayo was married to a woman named Chidinma. And Chidinma, Lord have mercy, Chidinma was the kind of beautiful that made grown men forget their own wives' names. The kind of beauty that poets write about, that musicians compose songs about, that caused accidents on Lagos highways because drivers could not stop staring. Smooth dark skin that glowed like polished mahogany wood under moonlight. A body sculpted like the ancient fertility goddesses our ancestors carved into sacred stones. Curves that defied logic and gravity. A smile that could make you sign over your entire inheritance without reading the paperwork. Eyes that sparkled with something that looked like love, but was actually calculation wearing a very convincing mask. When Adebayo married her 11 years ago, his friends, successful men, senators, oil tycoons, banking executives, threw parties that lasted 3 days straight. His business partners shook his hand with envy burning in their eyes like hot coals. Everyone told him he was the luckiest man alive. And Adebayo? He believed them. After his first wife, Ngozi, died 7 years earlier from a sudden illness that took her in just 3 weeks, Adebayo had felt like a part of his soul was buried 6 feet underground with her. The grief nearly killed him. He stopped eating, stopped working, stopped believing in anything good. Then Chidinma walked into his life like sunlight breaking through storm clouds after months of rain. She was 32 years old when they met, young enough to make him feel alive again, old enough to seem mature and capable of being a wife and mother. She had traveled to Jamaica for a modeling contract, returned to South Africa for Fashion Week, and somehow ended up in Nigeria at a charity gala where Adebayo was the keynote speaker. Their eyes met across a crowded ballroom in Victoria Island. 3 months later, they were married in a wedding that cost more than most people earn in 10 lifetimes. Traditional Yoruba ceremonies mixed with modern luxury. The entire elite class of Nigeria attended. Nollywood celebrities performed. It was the wedding of the decade. Chidinma gave Adebayo something he thought he had lost forever: hope. She laughed at his jokes, even the ones that were not funny. She cooked his favorite meals: jollof rice, egusi soup, pounded yam with bushmeat stew. She wore the traditional African attire he loved: beautiful Ankara prints, flowing geli head wraps, elegant kaftans that honored their Yoruba heritage. She attended his business meetings, smiled at his partners, and played the role of the perfect Nigerian wife. And she gave him 4 children. Chukwemeka, their firstborn, was now 21 years old and in his final year at Covenant University, studying business to one day take over his father's empire. Smart, ambitious, respectful. Everything a father could want in a son. Oluwaseun was 16, full of that teenage energy that made him question everything and argue about nothing. Loud, passionate, obsessed with Afrobeats music and football, dreaming of playing for the Super Eagles. Amarachi was 12, quieter than his brothers, but sharp in ways that surprised everyone who underestimated him. He loved reading African history, learning about the great kingdoms, studying the traditional stories and myths of their ancestors. And then there was baby Adana, barely 3 months old, still so small and fragile that Adebayo was afraid to hold her too tightly, as if she might shatter like precious crystal in his massive hands. Adebayo loved his children with every fiber of his being. He would kill for them, die for them, sacrifice his last breath to ensure they had a better life than he did. He had come from poverty, real poverty, the kind where you eat once every 2 days, where shoes are luxuries, where school fees are impossible dreams. He had built his empire from selling sachet water on Lagos streets to owning the water company itself. His children would never know that struggle. But if anyone asked him who he loved most in this world, the answer was always Chidinma. He loved her more than money, more than status, more than the empire he had spent 4 decades building from absolutely nothing. She was his queen, his peace, his reason for waking up every morning with gratitude to the ancestors. And that right there, that blind, absolute, unquestioning love, was his biggest mistake. Because while Chief Adebayo Okonkwo was busy loving Chidinma with his whole heart, she was busy planning how to enjoy his wealth the moment he was no longer breathing. This is the painful truth at the heart of this African folktale. Not every smile is genuine. Not every I love you is real. Not every wife is loyal. Our ancestors knew this. They built proverbs around it. They created entire storytelling traditions to warn future generations. They told cautionary tales around fires that burned long into the night, teaching young men to watch for snakes disguised as flowers. But some lessons, no matter how many times they are taught, must be learned through pain. One sunny afternoon in Lagos, the kind of afternoon where the heat makes the air shimmer and street vendors sell pure water and Fanta faster than they can restock, Adebayo's parents came to visit the Banana Island mansion. It had been weeks since baby Adana was born, and they wanted to see their newest grandchild and bless the family according to traditional Yoruba customs. His father, Alhaji Mustafa Okonkwo, was 91 years old, a man who had survived the Nigerian Civil War, witnessed the transition from colonialism to independence, endured military dictatorships, and lived through poverty so severe it would break modern men in half. He had built a life from literal dust before passing that wisdom, that hunger, that relentless drive to his son. His mother, Mama Folake Okonkwo, was 87 years old. Age had bent her back and slowed her steps, yes, but her mind. Oh, her mind was still sharp as broken glass, still cutting through lies and deception like a machete through tall grass. She had the gift that many African elders possess. The ability to see past faces into souls, to detect deception before words were even spoken, to know a person's true character within seconds of meeting them. This is the ancient wisdom our African folktales speak of, the knowing that transcends education, the sight that goes beyond eyes, the understanding that university degrees cannot teach. The moment Mama Folake walked into that mansion, past the gold-trimmed gates, through the marble foyer, across floors that cost more than most homes, her eyes found Chidinma. Just like that, her entire mood changed. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was not the kind of obvious display that young people engage in. But if you knew Mama Folake, if you understood the language of African mothers who have survived decades of hardship and learned to read human nature like ancient scripts, you could see it. The way her smile tightened like rope pulled taut. The way her eyes lingered a second too long, analyzing, calculating, understanding. The way she greeted Chidinma with politeness, perfect politeness, but absolutely zero warmth. The kind of greeting you give to strangers you do not trust, not to the wife of your beloved son. Alhaji Mustafa noticed too. He had been married to Folake for over 63 years. He knew that look better than he knew his own reflection. He knew what it meant when his wife's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He knew the silent language they had developed over 6 decades of marriage. But he said nothing. He had learned long ago, through trial and painful error, that when his wife had something to say, it was better to let her say it in her own time, in her own way. Rushing Mama Folake was like trying to rush a river, futile and likely to cause flooding. They blessed baby Adana according to traditional Yoruba customs, prayers in their native language, sacred water from the homeland, traditional incantations passed down through generations, wisdom whispered over the infant's head to protect her from evil spirits and bad fortune. They ate together at the massive dining table. The food was excellent, jollof rice prepared to perfection, fried plantains, pepper soup that made your eyes water in the best way, and Chidinma had even made Alhaji's favorite, umla with bigairai and yuta soup. The conversation was polite, civilized, respectful. But there was tension in the air, thick enough to choke on, heavy enough to crush bones. Anyone sensitive to emotional atmospheres could feel it. This invisible pressure that made breathing slightly difficult, that made conversation feel forced, that made everyone hyper-aware of every word spoken. Before they left, Mama Folake pulled Adebayo aside. She placed a wrinkled hand, hands that had worked fields, raised 9 children, survived wars and famines, on his expensive silk sleeve and looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much of life to be fooled by beautiful faces and practiced smiles. "My son," she said quietly in Yoruba, her voice steady but carrying the weight of undeniable truth. "You are 65 years old now." Adebayo smiled, trying to lighten the mood. "Mama, I know how old I am." "That is not a joke," Mama Folake continued, her grip tightening slightly on his arm. "You have lived long enough, you have seen enough of this world, to know that not everyone who smiles at you wishes you well. Not everyone who sleeps beside you dreams of your success. Not everyone who calls you husband prays for your long life." Adebayo frowned, feeling his chest tighten with discomfort. "Mama, what are you trying to say?" Mama Folake glanced toward the living room where Chidinma sat, scrolling through her phone, that cursed phone that seemed permanently attached to her hand, barely paying attention to baby Adana sleeping in the expensive crib beside her. The baby could have been furniture for all the attention Chidinma gave her. "That wife of yours," Mama Folake continued, her voice dropping even lower, "you need to test her." Adebayo felt his chest tighten further, anger beginning to rise in his throat like bile. "Mama, what kind of talk is this? Why would I test my own wife? I am an old woman, Adebayo. I have been on this earth for 87 years. I have seen things you cannot imagine. I have watched empires rise and fall. I have seen good men destroyed by beautiful women. I have attended too many funerals of men who refused to see what was right in front of them." She paused, choosing her words carefully, knowing how much they would hurt, but saying them anyway, because love sometimes requires causing pain to prevent greater suffering. The way she dresses, even when going nowhere, makeup like she is attending parties, short dresses in her own home. The way she moves, always aware of being watched, performing even when there is no audience. The way she looks at you when she thinks no one is watching. Not with love, my son, but with calculation. Like a market woman counting money. Mama Folake took a deep breath. That woman does not love you. She loves what you can give her. And the day you can no longer give, the day you become weak, the day you need her instead of her needing you, that is the day she will show her true face. And that face, my son, will be uglier than anything you can imagine. Adebayo pulled his arm away, anger now fully risen, voice raised more than he intended. "Mama, please, do not talk about my wife like that. Chidinma has given me children, 4 children. She takes care of this home. She cooks my food. She sleeps beside me every night. You cannot just accuse her based on how she dresses or how she looks at me." Mama Folake did not flinch. She did not raise her voice. She did not get defensive or angry. She just smiled, that sad, knowing smile that only mothers can give, that smile that says, "You will learn, but I wish you didn't have to." I am not accusing her, my son. I am warning you. There is a difference. You do not have to believe me now. Young men never believe their mothers when it comes to their wives. But one day, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe next year, you will remember this conversation. You will remember me standing here, telling you the truth you refused to hear. She reached up and touched his face gently, the way she did when he was a small boy. And when that day comes, when you finally see what I see today, I pray to all our ancestors that it is not too late. I pray that you survive whatever is coming. Because something is coming, my son. I can feel it in my bones. And it is not good. She left after that, walking slowly toward the car where Alhaji Mustafa waited. The old man squeezed Adebayo's shoulder on his way out, a silent gesture that said, "Listen to your mother, you stubborn fool." But Adebayo did not want to listen. He wanted to believe that his mother was wrong, that she was just being overprotective, that Chidinma truly loved him despite the age difference, despite the money, despite everything. That night, Adebayo lay in bed beside his wife. Chidinma was already asleep, her iPhone 15 Pro Max still glowing in her perfectly manicured hand. Even in sleep, she held on to that phone like it contained the secrets of the universe, like it was more important than her husband, more valuable than her children. Adebayo stared at the ceiling, expensive ceiling with recessed lighting and artistic molding. His mother's words echoing in his mind like drums in a traditional ceremony. Test her. He turned his head to look at Chidinma in the darkness. She was beautiful even in sleep. Her chest rose and fell gently. Her lips were slightly parted. Her silk bonnet perfectly positioned. She looked peaceful, innocent, and capable of deception. But then Adebayo started thinking, really thinking, not with his heart but with his mind. When was the last time Chidinma asked him about his day? Really asked, with genuine interest, wanting to know his struggles and victories? When was the last time she sat with him and just talked? The way they used to when they first got married, when conversation flowed like rivers, when silences were comfortable instead of heavy. When was the last time she looked at him with love in her eyes instead of that distant, distracted look she always had now? That look that said her mind was somewhere else, with someone else, thinking about something else? He thought about how she was always on her phone, always laughing at messages she never showed him, always stepping outside to take calls she claimed were from her friends, but never explained further, always defensive when asked simple questions. He thought about the clothes she wore, short dresses that left little to the imagination, makeup so heavy it looked like war paint, perfume so strong it announced her presence 3 rooms away. And all this for what? To stay home? To take care of children? To be a wife? He thought about how she would leave the house without telling him where she was going, just grab her keys, grab her phone, and disappear for hours. And when she returned, her explanations never quite made sense. They were too detailed or too vague, over-rehearsed or completely improvised. Shopping with Ngozi. Hair appointment that took 6 hours. Checking on my mother, whose health seemed to require daily 6-hour visits. Adebayo tried to push the thoughts away. He told himself he was being paranoid. He told himself that his mother's words had poisoned his mind, had planted seeds of doubt where there should only be trust. But the truth is, once a seed of doubt is planted in fertile soil, it is almost impossible to stop it from growing. And the worst part, the part that would destroy Adebayo in ways he could not yet imagine, was that his mother had been absolutely, devastatingly, horrifyingly right. Chidinma was everything Mama Folake feared and more. Selfish beyond measure. Greedy beyond imagination. Manipulative beyond description. Unfaithful in ways that would make even the most cynical person gasp in horror. She had never loved Chief Adebayo Okonkwo. Not once. Not even for a single moment during their 11-year marriage. To her, he was nothing more than an old man whose money she could enjoy, whose status elevated her social position, whose death she was literally counting down to like a prisoner marking days until release. And after that death, whether natural or accelerated, she would take everything and never look back. She would dance on his grave wearing designer shoes bought with his money. But Adebayo did not know this yet. And that ignorance, that beautiful, terrible ignorance, was the most painful part of all. Because the truth was coming. And when it arrived, it would destroy everything. A few days later, on a regular Tuesday morning in Lagos, the kind of morning where traffic is already insane by 6 a.m., where generators are humming because NEPA has struck again, where the city is alive with organized chaos, something happened that would crack the foundation of Adebayo's perfect life. It was a school morning. Chidinma woke up early, got Oluwaseun and Amarachi dressed in their uniforms, made sure they had their school bags, and hustled them into her white Range Rover Sport. Chukwuemeka had already returned to Covenant University campus the previous week to prepare for his final examinations. So it was just the two younger boys and baby Adana at home. Adebayo watched from the window of his home office as Chidinma drove off, her vehicle disappearing through the gates of their Banana Island mansion. He smiled to himself, thinking about how blessed he was to have a wife who took such good care of their family, who woke up early every morning to handle the children, who seemed so devoted to her role as mother and wife. But Chidinma was not going straight to school. Oh no. Instead, she took a detour. A detour she had taken many, many times before. A route she knew by heart, could drive blindfolded, had memorized better than the route to her own children's school. She drove to Tun's house in Victoria Island. Tund was 38 years old, younger than Adebayo by nearly 3 decades, more handsome than any man his age had the right to be, with muscles that came from dedicated gym time and a smile that had destroyed many marriages before Chidinma's. He made Chidinma feel alive in ways that her old husband never could, never did, and never would. He made her laugh, made her feel young, made her feel desired not for her role as chief's wife, but for herself. Or at least, that is what she told herself to justify the betrayal. She had been seeing Tund for over 2 years now. 2 years of lies. 2 years of sneaking around. 2 years of phone calls in the bathroom. 2 years of elaborate cover stories. 2 years of living a double life so convincingly that even her own children had no idea. This morning, she told herself she would just stop by for a quick visit. 1 hour turned into 2. 2 turned into 3. 3 turned into 4. By the time Chidinma remembered, actually remembered, like she had completely forgotten her own children existed, that she was supposed to pick up Oluwaseun and Amarachi from their private school in Lekki, it was already too late. Mr. Adewale, the boys' homeroom teacher at Greenwood International School, had been trying to call her phone for over an hour. Ring, 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 ring. No answer. The phone just rang and rang and rang, echoing in a bedroom where Chidinma was too busy with Tund to hear it, too distracted to care, too lost in her own selfish pleasure to remember she was a mother. Finally, with no other choice, with 2 confused children sitting in his classroom long after everyone else had gone home, Mr. Adewale called Chief Adebayo directly. "Good afternoon, sir," Mr. Adewale said, his voice professional but clearly concerned. "I am very sorry to disturb you during business hours, but your children, Oluwaseun and Amarachi, are still here at school. It is already past pickup time, and we have not been able to reach your wife." Adebayo's stomach dropped like a stone thrown into deep water. "What do you mean? Where is Chidinma?" "I do not know, sir. I have tried calling her phone several times. The line rings, but she does not answer. I wanted to call you before taking any other action." Adebayo's jaw clenched. His massive hands balled into fists so tight his knuckles turned white. His heart was pounding. Not from exertion, but from pure, concentrated rage mixed with confusion and a terrible suspicion he did not want to acknowledge. "I will send my driver immediately," he said, his voice dangerously calm in the way that people who know him understood meant he was furious beyond words. "Please keep my children safe. Give them water and snacks. I will handle this." He hung up and immediately called his driver, Emeka, barking orders for him to go pick up Oluwaseun and Amarachi from school right away. Then he sat down heavily in his leather office chair, a chair that cost 2.5 million Nigerian nairas, imported from Italy, custom-made for his frame, and his mind started racing like Lagos traffic at rush hour. Where was Chidinma? Why was her phone not being answered? Why would she actually forget, to pick up their children from school? What was more important than her own sons? When Chidinma finally walked through the front door that evening around 6:47 p.m., she looked completely unbothered. Not guilty, not apologetic, not even concerned. She strolled in casually, designer handbag swinging from her shoulder, car keys jingling, heading straight for the kitchen like it was just another normal day, like she had not abandoned her children at school, like nothing had happened at all. Adebayo stood in the doorway of the living room, watching her with an expression that would have made a wiser woman stop in her tracks. "Where were you?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. Chidinma barely looked at him, opening the refrigerator to get a bottle of water. "Out." "Why? Out where, Chidinma?" "Just out, Adebayo." Why are you interrogating me? Our children were stranded at school, Adebayo said, his voice rising slightly despite his efforts to stay calm. Mr. Adewale had to call me because you were not answering your phone. She shrugged. Actually shrugged, like it was nothing, like their sons sitting confused and worried in an empty classroom was equivalent to forgetting to buy bread at the market. I forgot. It happens. The children are fine, are they not? No apology. No explanation. No guilt. No remorse. Just coldness. Ice-cold indifference that cut deeper than any knife could. You forgot our children? Adebayo repeated, his voice filled with disbelief. How does a mother forget to pick up her children from school? Adebayo, you are making a big deal out of nothing. They're home now. They're safe. What more do you want? Adebayo stared at her for a long moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. And in that moment, everything his mother had said came rushing back like a flood breaking through a dam, drowning him in terrible understanding. That woman does not love you. Test her. The day you become weak, the day you need her, that is when she will show her true face. Mama Folake's words echoed in his mind like traditional drums at a funeral ceremony, loud and undeniable and impossible to ignore. And suddenly, Adebayo realized something that made his blood run cold. His mother had been absolutely right. Adebayo could not sleep for 3 nights straight. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Chidinma's face, that cold, unbothered expression when she came home after abandoning their children. The way she shrugged like it meant nothing, like their sons meant nothing, like their family meant nothing. The way she looked at him without even a flicker of guilt or remorse or human empathy. He kept replaying his mother's words in his head, over and over like a song stuck on repeat, like a curse he could not shake. Test her. But how? How do you test someone you have given your whole heart to? How do you investigate the woman you wake up next to every morning? How do you spy on the mother of your children? Adebayo felt like he was losing his mind. Like he was going crazy. Like the walls of his expensive mansion were closing in on him despite the 15,000 square feet of space. Finally, on the 4th day, he decided to call his friend Olamide. Olamide was about 62 years old, a fellow businessman who had been through 3 divorces. 3 painful, expensive, soul-crushing divorces that had taught him more about the games people play than most marriage counselors would learn in a lifetime. If anyone could give Adebayo advice, it was Olamide. If anyone would understand without judgment, it was him. They met at a quiet restaurant in Victoria Island. The kind of place where powerful men discuss dangerous things, where privacy is guaranteed, where conversations that happen there never leave there. Adebayo looked exhausted, like a man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, like a king whose kingdom was crumbling, and he was the only one who could see the cracks. Olamide noticed immediately. "My brother, what is eating you?" Olamide asked, pouring them both glasses of expensive cognac. Louis XIII, because men at their level did not drink cheap alcohol even when their hearts were breaking. "You look like a man who has seen a ghost." Adebayo hesitated. He felt ashamed even saying the words out loud. But he had no choice. The pressure in his chest was becoming unbearable. "Olamide, I need your advice. It is about Chidinma." Olamide raised an eyebrow. "Your wife? What about her?" Adebayo told him everything. His mother's warning. Chidinma's behavior. The incident with the children at school. The way she was always on her phone, always distant, always somewhere else even when she was right in front of him. The way she looked at him now, not with love, but with something else. Something cold. Something calculating. Olamide listened quietly, nodding slowly, his face betraying no emotion but his eyes revealing deep understanding. When Adebayo finished, Olamide sat back in his chair and let out a long breath. "My brother," Olamide said, shaking his head slowly. "These women of nowadays, they are not like the women our fathers married. They are not like the women in our traditional African stories, the ones who stood by their husbands through famine and war. They are smart. They know how to hide things. They know how to play the game better than we do. And they know that men like us, men with money, men with power, we are easy targets. So what do I do?" Adebayo asked, and the desperation in his voice made him sound 20 years younger, like a boy asking his father for guidance. Olamide leaned forward, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "You need to test her, but not in a way she will see coming. You need to put yourself in a position where she thinks you are weak, helpless, dependent. Because that is when people show their true colors, when they think you cannot fight back, when they think you need them more than they need you." Adebayo frowned. "What do you mean?" Olamide paused, choosing his words carefully, knowing he was about to suggest something that would change Adebayo's life forever. Pretend you are blind. Adebayo blinked. What? Pretend something happened to your eyes. That you cannot see. Tell her you went to the doctor, and they said it will take months to heal. Maybe 3 months. Maybe longer. During that time, watch her, or rather, listen to her. Listen to everything she says when she thinks you cannot see. See what she does when she thinks you are no longer the strong man she married. Adebayo felt a chill run down his spine despite the Lagos heat. Olamide, that is a dangerous game. I know, Olamide said seriously, his voice heavy with the weight of hard-earned wisdom. But brother, if you want to know the truth, if you want to see who your wife really is, this is how you find it. When a man can no longer provide, when a man can no longer protect, when a man becomes weak, that is when a woman's true nature comes out. If Chidinma loves you, she will stand by you. She will take care of you. She will prove your mother wrong. But if she does not, Olamide did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. The silence between them said everything. When the hunter becomes the hunted. Adebayo drove home in silence that evening, the Lagos traffic giving him time to think. Too much time, actually. His mind was racing faster than the Okada riders weaving dangerously between cars on the third mainland bridge. Could he really do this? Could he pretend to be blind just to catch his wife in her lies? Could he deceive the woman he loved just to discover if she was deceiving him? But then he remembered the way Chidinma looked at him when she came home that day. Cold, indifferent, like he was nothing. Like his feelings were nothing. Like their children were nothing. Like everything he had built, everything he had provided, everything he had sacrificed meant absolutely nothing to her. And he made his decision. That night, after Chidinma went to bed, after she scrolled through her phone for 2 hours, giggling at messages she would never show him, typing responses she would never explain, Adebayo made 2 critical phone calls. The first was to his family doctor, Dr. Babatunde. Dr. Babatunde had been treating the Okonkwo family for over 23 years. He had delivered 2 of Adebayo's children. He had treated Adebayo's late wife Ngozi during her final illness. He knew the family's medical history better than he knew his own. Adebayo trusted him completely, with his health, with his secrets, with his life. "Doctor, I need your help with something," Adebayo said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper as he stood in his walk-in closet, surrounded by custom suits that cost more than cars. "But you cannot tell anyone. Not even your wife. Not your nurses. No one." "Of course, Chief. What is it?" Dr. Babatunde's voice was concerned. In all their years together, he had never heard this tone from Adebayo. This mixture of determination and desperation. Adebayo explained the plan. Every detail. Every element. Every risk. Dr. Babatunde was silent for a moment that felt like an eternity. Then he sighed deeply. The kind of sigh that doctors give when they know they are about to participate in something that goes against their better judgment, but they understand why it is necessary. "Chief, are you absolutely sure about this? This is very serious. This is not a small thing. If this goes wrong..." "I am sure," Adebayo said firmly, his voice carrying the authority that had built empires and crushed competitors. "I need to know the truth. I need to see who my wife really is. And this is the only way." Dr. Babatunde agreed to help. Because sometimes painful truth is better than comfortable lies. The second call was to his lawyer, Mr. Chinedu Obiora, senior partner at Obiora and Associates, one of the most powerful law firms in Lagos, a man who had protected Adebayo's interests for 15 years. If Adebayo was going to do this, if he was going to pretend to be blind to expose his wife, he needed to protect himself and his children legally. He needed to make sure that no matter what happened, no matter what Chidinma tried, she could not touch his properties, could not access his offshore accounts, could not steal his empire. He needed to build a legal fortress while appearing vulnerable. Mr. Obiora listened carefully to Adebayo's plan. When Adebayo finished, there was a long pause on the line. "Chief, I will prepare everything," Mr. Obiora said finally. "I will restructure your assets, create trusts for the children, establish legal protections that she cannot penetrate. But please be careful. If this woman is as dangerous as you suspect, if she is capable of the things your instincts are telling you, she will not take this lightly. Cornered animals are the most dangerous." "I know," Adebayo said, and for the first time in the conversation, his voice wavered slightly. "That is exactly what I am afraid of." The next morning, Wednesday, October 18th, 2023, a date that would be burned into Adebayo's memory forever, he woke up early. His heart was pounding like traditional drums at an Igbo ceremony. His palms were sweating despite the air conditioning that kept the bedroom at exactly 18 degrees Celsius. His mouth was dry. This was it, the performance of his lifetime. He got out of bed quietly, careful not to wake Chidinma, who was still sleeping peacefully, her silk bonnet perfectly in place, her phone charging on the nightstand, her face relaxed in sleep. The face of someone with no guilt, no conscience, no awareness of the storm that was about to break. Adebayo went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on his face, looked at himself in the mirror. Really looked at himself, maybe for the first time in years. He saw a 65-year-old man who had built everything from nothing. A man who had survived poverty, betrayal, business failures, and personal tragedy. A man who had always been strong, always been in control, always been the protector. And now he was about to pretend to be weak. He took a deep breath, said a quick prayer to his ancestors for strength and wisdom, and walked back into the bedroom. Then he started screaming. My eyes! My eyes! Chidinma! Chidinma, I cannot see. Chidinma jolted awake, confused, disoriented. At first, she looked annoyed, like Adebayo had woken her up for no good reason, like this was some kind of cruel joke interrupting her beauty sleep. But then she saw the genuine panic on his face. The way his hands were covering his eyes. The way he was stumbling, genuinely stumbling, knocking into furniture like a man who could not see where he was going. Her expression changed. She jumped out of bed, rushing to his side, her silk nightgown flowing behind her. Adebayo, what happened? What is wrong? I cannot see, Adebayo said, his voice shaking with what sounded like pure terror. Everything is dark. Chidinma, I cannot see anything. Nothing. Just darkness. Chidinma's eyes widened. For a split second, just a fraction of a moment, Adebayo thought he saw something flash across her face. Was it concern? Or was it something else? Something that looked almost like relief? We need to call the doctor, Chidinma said quickly, already reaching for her phone. Right now. Dr. Babatunde needs to come immediately. Within 45 minutes, Dr. Babatunde arrived at the Banana Island mansion, his medical bag in hand, his face perfectly arranged in an expression of professional concern. He examined Adebayo's eyes carefully, meticulously. Shining lights. Asking questions. Running tests. Checking reflexes. Taking blood pressure. Looking into pupils with specialized equipment. Chidinma stood nearby, her arms crossed, watching intently. Too intently, perhaps. Like someone watching an investment, not a husband. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was actually only 30 minutes, Dr. Babatunde turned to Chidinma with the gravest expression he could manage. I am very, very sorry to tell you this, Mrs. Okonkwo, he said slowly, carefully, making sure every word landed with appropriate weight. But your husband has lost his sight completely. Chidinma's hand flew to her mouth in what appeared to be shock. What? How is that possible? It appears to be a sudden condition, possibly caused by severe stress, or a blood clot affecting his optic nerves, or potentially a stroke-related incident. Without more tests at the hospital, I cannot be certain. But what I can tell you definitively is that Chief Okonkwo cannot see anything right now. He is completely blind. For how long? Chidinma asked, and there was something in her voice, something Adebayo noticed even through his blindness, that sounded almost eager. At least 3 months, Dr. Babatunde said gravely. Possibly longer. Maybe 6 months. Maybe more. These conditions are unpredictable. I will need to treat him and monitor his condition very closely. But for now, you must accept that your husband is completely blind and will need extensive care. Adebayo sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands, playing his role perfectly. Inside, his heart was breaking. Not because he was pretending to be blind, but because of what he saw on Chidinma's face when Dr. Babatunde delivered the news. Relief. Just for a second, so quick that most people would have missed it entirely. But Adebayo saw it. That tiny smile that flickered at the corner of her lips before she covered it with a look of appropriate concern. That brief moment where her eyes lit up, not with sadness for her husband's condition, but with something else entirely. Opportunity. Dr. Babatunde wrapped thick white medical bandages around Adebayo's eyes, covering them completely, securing them with medical tape. You need to keep these on for now, Chief, Dr. Babatunde said loudly, for Chidinma's benefit. No light should reach your eyes until they have a chance to heal. The bandages stay on at all times. Only I should remove them, and only for examinations. Adebayo nodded silently, playing the role of the defeated man, the broken king, the fallen warrior. After Dr. Babatunde left, Chidinma helped Adebayo back into bed. She was gentle, careful, playing the role of the concerned wife with an Oscar-worthy performance. But Adebayo could feel it, the coldness beneath her touch, the calculation in her movements, the performance in her voice. When the news reached the children, their reactions were heartbreaking. Chukwuemeka rushed home from Covenant University immediately, abandoning his studies, tears streaming down his face. He burst through the door and fell to his knees beside his father's bed, holding Adebayo's hands, sobbing like a child. Papa, what happened? You are going to be okay. You have to be okay. You are the strongest man I know. You will get through this. Oluwaseun and Amarachi cried so hard they could barely breathe. They gathered around their father like baby birds around their wounded parent, holding his hands, telling him everything would be okay, promising to take care of him. Adebayo's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. His sons loved him, truly, deeply, unconditionally loved him. And here he was lying to them, making them suffer, breaking their hearts just to expose their mother's true nature. But he had no choice. He had to know the truth, even if the truth destroyed him. Adebayo also called his parents to tell them what had happened. His mother, Mama Folake, was quiet on the other end of the line, silent for so long that Adebayo thought the call had disconnected. "Mama, are you there?" "My son," she said softly, and Adebayo could hear something in her voice, understanding perhaps, knowing. "Do not worry. God and our ancestors will take care of you. Just be strong. Be very, very strong. What is coming will test you in ways you cannot imagine." Adebayo knew what she meant. She knew this was a test. She knew he was hunting for truth. And she was telling him to be ready for whatever horror that truth might reveal. Meanwhile, Chidinma wasted absolutely no time. That very night, the same night her husband had allegedly gone blind, the same night her children had cried themselves to exhausted sleep, she snuck out to the balcony of their mansion and made a phone call. The Lagos night was hot and humid, thick with the smell of nearby lagoon water and distant generator smoke. But Chidinma did not notice any of it. She was too focused on the phone pressed to her ear, too excited about the possibilities suddenly opening before her like doors to paradise. "Tund," she whispered, her voice barely audible but vibrating with suppressed excitement. "Something happened. Adebayo is blind." There was silence on the other end. Then Tund laughed, a low, dangerous laugh that should have warned Chidinma about the kind of man she had chosen to betray her husband with. "Blind? Are you serious? What do you mean blind?" "Yes." Chidinma's voice rose slightly before she caught herself and lowered it again. "The doctor said he cannot see anything. He will not see for at least 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe longer." "Tund, do you understand what this means?" Tund's voice turned serious, calculating. "Chidinma, this is it. This is our chance. The opportunity we have been waiting for." "Our chance for what?" Chidinma asked, though somewhere deep down, in the part of her soul that was not completely corrupted, in the tiny fragment of conscience she had not yet sold. She already knew what he was going to say. To get rid of him. Chidinma's breath caught in her throat. The Lagos night suddenly felt colder despite the equatorial heat. "Tund, what are you saying?" "Think about it," Tund said, his voice smooth as expensive whiskey, persuasive as the devil himself. "He is blind now. Weak. Helpless. Dependent. No one will suspect anything if something happens to him. An accident. A heart attack. A fall down the stairs. Old man blind, tragic accident. The story writes itself." He paused, letting his words sink in like poison into an open wound. "And once he is gone, once Chief Adebayo Okonkwo is dead and buried, everything he owns becomes yours. The houses in Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt. The properties in South Africa and Jamaica. The cars. The offshore accounts. The businesses. The investments. Everything. Billions of naira. We will never have to hide again. We will never have to sneak around like criminals. You will be a wealthy widow, and I will be right there beside you." Chidinma stood there in the darkness of her balcony, overlooking the glittering lights of Banana Island, her heart racing like she had just run a marathon. She had never thought about it like this before. Not seriously, not as an actual plan. Sure, she had fantasized about what life would be like when Adebayo eventually died of old age. She had mentally spent his money 1,000 times. She had imagined herself as a rich widow, free to do whatever she wanted, with whomever she wanted. But this was different. This was not waiting for natural death. This was murder. What do you want me to do?" she asked quietly, her voice barely a whisper, as if saying it any louder would make it more real, more unforgivable, more evil. Tun smiled on the other end of the phone. She could not see it, but she could hear it in his voice. "Leave it to me. I will come up with a plan. Just keep playing the loving, devoted wife. Keep everyone thinking you are devastated by his blindness. Keep up the performance. And when the time is right, when everything is in place, we will make our move." "How will you?" "Do not worry about the details," Tund interrupted smoothly. "Just trust me. I have connections. I know people. This can be done cleanly, safely, with no one suspecting anything. But you have to be patient. You have to be smart. Can you do that?" Chidinma stood there for a long moment, staring out at the Lagos skyline, thinking about everything she stood to gain and everything she was about to lose. Though she did not yet understand that what she would lose was far more valuable than what she might gain. Her humanity, her soul, her children's respect, her freedom. "Yes," she finally said, her voice cold and decided. "I can do that." "Good," Tun purred. "My beautiful, smart Chidinma. Soon, very soon, all of this will be ours." She hung up the phone and stood there for a long time, staring out into the night, her mind racing with possibilities and plans and dreams of wealth. Inside the house, Adebayo lay in bed with the bandages covering his eyes. But he was not asleep, and he had heard everything. You see, here is the thing about Chief Adebayo Okonkwo that Chidinma had forgotten, or perhaps never truly understood. He had not built a business empire, survived cutthroat Nigerian business competition, navigated corrupt government officials, and outlasted countless rivals by being foolish or careless. He had not climbed from poverty to become one of the wealthiest men in Lagos by being naive or trusting or stupid. Before he ever pretended to go blind, before he ever wrapped those bandages around his perfectly functioning eyes, he had made preparations. Smart preparations. Strategic preparations. The kind of preparations that would make Sun Tzu proud. He had called in Sterling Security Systems, one of the most sophisticated security companies in Nigeria, owned by a retired DSS director who owed Adebayo several massive favors. "I want to upgrade the cameras in my house," Adebayo had told them 2 days before his blindness. "For safety reasons. My wife is worried about security with all the kidnappings happening in Lagos these days." It was a reasonable request. A common request. Nothing suspicious about a wealthy man wanting better security. What Chidinma did not know, what she could not have known, was that the upgrade involved installing hidden cameras in every single room of their mansion. The living room, the kitchen, the bedrooms, the hallways, the guest rooms, the balconies, even the bathrooms, though Adebayo felt guilty about that invasion of privacy. But he needed the truth, all of it, no matter how ugly. Cameras so small you would not notice them unless you were specifically looking for them. Cameras disguised as smoke detectors, picture frames, decorative vases, wall clocks, electrical outlets. Professional-grade surveillance equipment that cost more than most people's annual salary. He also installed voice recorders in key areas of the house. Tiny devices that could pick up conversations from across a room, that could capture whispers through walls, that recorded everything 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Adebayo knew that if Chidinma was going to betray him, if she was going to reveal her true nature, she would do it when she thought he was helpless, when she thought he could not see, when she thought she was safe. And he wanted proof. Evidence that could not be denied, could not be argued away, could not be explained as misunderstanding or coincidence. So every night, after Chidinma went to sleep, after she scrolled through her phone for hours, giggling at messages from Tund, typing responses filled with heart emojis and promises, Adebayo would carefully, silently remove the bandages from his eyes. He would slip out of the bedroom like a shadow, moving with the stealth of a man who had everything to lose, and make his way to the small CCTV control room he had set up in the basement of the mansion. A room Chidinma did not even know existed. A room with 12 monitors showing live feeds from every camera in the house. A room with recording equipment that captured everything. Every conversation, every phone call, every moment of betrayal. And there he would sit for hours, watching the footage from that day, listening to the recordings, and what he saw was breaking him piece by piece, destroying him slowly like termites eating away at a foundation. 3 days after Adebayo's blindness began, Chidinma made a decision that would seal her fate forever. After Oluwaseun and Amarachi left for school that morning, after the house was empty except for baby Adana and her blind father, Chidinma picked up her phone and made a call that would change everything. "Tund," she said, her voice low but confident. "You should come to the house today." Adebayo sat frozen in his chair in the living room, his heart pounding, his hands gripping the armrests so tightly his knuckles turned white. Tund laughed on the other end. "Come to the house." "Chidinma, are you mad? What if someone sees me? What if the neighbors?" "No one will see you," Chidinma said confidently, almost arrogantly. "Chukwumika is back at university writing his final exams. Oluwaseun and Amarachi will be in school until 3 p.m. The house is huge. We can stay in the guest wing on the far side. Adebayo will not even know you are here." She paused, and Adebayo could hear the cruel smile in her voice. "He cannot see, remember? He is blind. Completely blind. He is useless now. We can do whatever we want." There was a pause. Then Tun said, "All right. I will be there in 1 hour." "But Chidinma." I know. Be careful. I will leave the side gate open. Park on the street and walk in. No one will see you." She hung up and walked past Adebayo without saying a single word, her expensive heels clicking on the imported marble floor, the sound echoing through the massive house like gunshots. Adebayo sat there, his fists clenched so tight his entire body was shaking. Tund was coming to his house. His own house. The house he had built with his own sweat and blood and tears and decades of relentless work. But here is the thing that Chidinma in her arrogance and confidence and stupidity had forgotten. Adebayo was not just some foolish old man. He was not just a naive husband who could be easily deceived. He had cameras everywhere, voice recorders everywhere, and he could see perfectly. When Tund arrived that afternoon, slipping through the side gate like a thief, which in every way that mattered, he was, Chidinma opened the door with a smile Adebayo had not seen in years. She threw her arms around Tund, kissed him deeply, passionately, right there in the doorway of Adebayo's mansion, in the house Adebayo had built, on the property Adebayo owned. The disrespect was staggering. The betrayal was complete. Adebayo was sitting in the living room, pretending to be blind, pretending to be helpless, pretending to listen to the radio. He could hear their voices, low and muffled, coming from the hallway, but he could not make out the words. His chest tightened with rage so pure, so concentrated, so powerful that he thought he might actually have a heart attack right there. But he forced himself to stay calm. He forced himself to breathe. He forced himself to continue the performance. He had to let this play out. He had to see how far she would go. He had to capture everything. Chidinma and Tund went upstairs to the guest wing, far away from where Adebayo was sitting, to a room at the very far end of the house where the walls were thick and sound did not travel easily. They thought they were safe. They thought they were invisible. They had no idea that every step they took, every word they spoke, every betrayal they committed was being recorded in crystal-clear high-definition video and audio. That night, after Chidinma had returned from taking the boys to their evening lessons, after she had helped blind Adebayo to bed, after she had gone to sleep with that satisfied smile on her face, Adebayo slipped down to the CCTV room. And he watched everything. The footage started with Tund walking into the guest room. But he was not alone. He was carrying baby Adana in his arms. Adebayo leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the screen, his entire world starting to collapse like a building with a compromised foundation. Tund looked down at the baby and smiled. Not the polite smile you give to someone else's child, not the careful smile of a family friend. No, this was different. This was the smile of a father looking at his daughter. "My baby girl," Tund said softly, kissing Adana's forehead with such tenderness, such love, such obvious paternal affection. "Look at you. So beautiful. So perfect. Just like your mama. My baby girl. Not the baby. Not Adebayo's baby. Not Chidinma's baby. My baby girl." Adebayo felt like someone had reached into his chest, grabbed his heart with both hands, and squeezed until it stopped beating. The room started spinning. His vision, his actual vision, because of course he could see perfectly, started to blur with tears. His breathing became rapid, shallow, desperate. Chidinma walked over and stood beside Tund, looking down at baby Adana with a smile that confirmed everything. "She has your eyes," Chidinma said casually, like she was discussing the weather, like she was commenting on a beautiful sunset, like she was not destroying a man's entire world with 6 simple words. Tund laughed. "I know. I noticed it the day she was born. I just hope this blind fool does not figure it out when he gets his sight back. If he ever gets it back. They both laughed. Standing in Adebayo's house, holding Adebayo's daughter, spending Adebayo's money, living under Adebayo's roof, and laughing at him. Adebayo's hands trembled as he gripped the edge of the desk in the CCTV room. He wanted to scream. He wanted to run upstairs and drag Tund out of his house by his throat. He wanted to destroy everything and everyone. But he could not move. He could barely breathe. Baby Adana was not his daughter. The child he had held in his arms the day she was born. The child he had introduced to his parents with such pride. The child he had prayed over and blessed and loved with every fiber of his being. She was not his. Adebayo's mind started racing, spiraling into darker and darker places. If Adana was not his daughter, what about the others? What about Chukwemeka? Jeffrey? Gabriel? Had Chidinma been lying to him for 11 years? Were any of those children his? On the screen, Tund placed Adana back in her crib gently and turned to Chidinma. Listen, Tund said, his tone becoming serious, businesslike. You need to make sure Adebayo uses his money to take care of MY children. All of them. I do not care how you do it. Set up trust funds, open bank accounts, education funds, whatever. Just make sure my kids are taken care of. They deserve his money more than he does. My children. Not our children. Not the children. My children. Meaning all of them. Meaning it was not just Adana. Adebayo felt like he was dying. Like his soul was being ripped out of his body piece by piece. Chidinma nodded eagerly. Do not worry, baby. Once Adebayo is gone, everything will be mine anyway. And then it will be ours. Your children will have everything. Private schools in London, universities in America, trust funds that will make them wealthy for life. All of it. Good, Tund said, pulling her close, kissing her neck. Because I am tired of hiding, Chidinma. I am tired of waiting. I am tired of this old man standing between us and the life we deserve. He needs to go. Soon. How soon? Chidinma asked. Very soon. I am working on something. Something that will look completely natural. A heart attack, maybe. Or a fall. Blind old man, tragic accident. No one will question it. But you have to be patient a little longer. Just a few more weeks. Maybe a month. Then we will be free. Adebayo watched in absolute horror as Tund and Chidinma kissed, as they touched each other, as they made themselves comfortable in his guest room like it was their own private hotel, like they owned the place, like Adebayo was already dead and buried and forgotten. The recording continued for 3 more hours. And in those 3 hours, Adebayo learned truths that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Baby Adana was Tund's daughter. 100% confirmed, no doubt, no question. Alyawazian was also Tund's son, conceived during a business trip to South Africa that Chidinma had taken alone 3 years before Alyawazian was born. She had been seeing Tund even longer than Adebayo had suspected. Amarachi was also Tund's son, conceived during another trip, this time to Jamaica, where Chidinma claimed she was visiting an old friend, but was actually spending 2 weeks with Tund in a beach resort. Only Chukwemeka, sweet, loyal, devoted Chukwemeka, was actually Adebayo's biological son. The only one. Out of 4 children, only 1 carried his blood. The other 3 were Tund's. And Chidinma had lied about it for years. For years. Every birthday party, every school event, every family dinner, every "I love you, Papa" from children who were not even his. All of it built on lies. Days passed, and the weight of what Adebayo knew was crushing him slowly, like being buried alive under tons of earth. But he continued his performance. Every morning, those bandages went over his eyes. Every morning, he pretended to stumble around like a helpless man. Every morning, he played the role of the defeated king, the fallen warrior, the broken chief. But inside his head, he was putting together the pieces of a puzzle that was destroying him bit by bit. He had seen everything now through those cameras. Tund holding baby Adana like she was his own flesh and blood, because she was. Chidinma laughing with Tund in the same bed Adebayo had bought with money earned through decades of sacrifice. The conversations about getting rid of him. The plans. The schemes. The calculations. The casual cruelty. The absolute lack of remorse. The complete absence of any human empathy or decency. All of it captured. All of it recorded. All of it undeniable. But while Adebayo was busy discovering the full depth of Chidinma's betrayal, Chidinma herself was starting to notice something. Something that made her skin crawl with fear. Adebayo was different now. The way he responded to her had changed subtly. When she spoke to him, his voice was colder, sharper, like ice cutting through skin. When she walked into a room, she could feel tension in the air, thick, suffocating, dangerous. And sometimes, just sometimes, she would catch him turning his head in her direction too quickly, too precisely, too accurately for someone who supposedly could not see anything at all. Like someone who knew exactly where she was standing. Like someone who could see perfectly. It started eating at her consciousness like acid eating through metal. Every night she would lie awake beside Adebayo, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with terrible possibilities. Does he know? Has he been pretending this whole time? Are the bandages fake? Is this all a trap? The thought terrified her more than anything else in the world. More than poverty. More than losing her status. More than jail. Because if Adebayo knew the truth, if he had discovered her betrayal, if he had evidence, if he had been recording everything, she was finished. Completely, totally, irreversibly finished. One afternoon, after the boys had left for school and Adebayo was sitting in the living room supposedly listening to radio, Chidinma decided to do something she should have done weeks ago. She started searching the house. She moved carefully, quietly, her heart pounding like war drums, looking at everything with newly suspicious eyes. The vases on the shelves. The picture frames on the walls. The decorations she had never paid attention to before because she had never had reason to be suspicious. And then, in the kitchen, hidden behind the fruit basket on the marble counter, tucked into a corner where you would never notice it unless you were specifically looking for it, she found it. A small black device. A camera. A hidden camera. Chidinma picked it up with trembling hands, her heart dropping into her stomach like a stone into deep water. She felt like she could not breathe, could not think, could not process what this meant. No, 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 she whispered to herself, her voice shaking. If there was one camera in the kitchen, where else were they? How many were there? What had they recorded? What did Adebayo know? Panic rising like floodwater, Chidinma ran upstairs, taking the steps two at a time despite her expensive heels. She went straight to the guest room, the room where she had brought Tun so many times, where they had laughed and kissed and planned Adebayo's death. She tore through the space like a woman possessed, searching every corner, every shelf, every surface. And there it was, another camera, hidden inside a decorative picture frame that hung on the wall. Right above the bed. The bed where she and Tund had been meeting for months. The bed where Tund had held baby Adana and called her my baby girl. The bed where they had planned to murder her husband. All of it. On camera. Recorded. Chidinma felt like the walls were closing in on her, like the air was being sucked out of the room, like she was drowning in dry land. He knows, she whispered, her voice barely audible, her entire body shaking. Adebayo knows everything. She did not waste another second. She grabbed her car keys, her phone, her designer handbag, and ran out of that mansion like the devil himself was chasing her, which, in a way, he was. She drove to Tun's apartment in Victoria Island, speeding through Lagos traffic, running red lights, nearly causing 3 accidents, her mind completely consumed with terror. When Tund opened the door of his apartment, Chidinma pushed past him and slammed it shut behind her, her chest heaving, mascara running down her face, hands shaking uncontrollably. "We have a problem," she said, her voice trembling with pure fear. "A very, very big problem." Tund looked at her, confused and concerned. "What are you talking about?" Chidinma calmed down. "Adebayo has cameras," she screamed, all composure gone, all pretense shattered. "Hidden cameras. All over the house. In the kitchen, in the guest room, probably everywhere. Tund, he has been watching us this whole time. He has been recording everything." Tund's face went from confused to pale in seconds. The color literally drained from his skin, like someone had pulled a plug. "What? Are you absolutely sure?" "Yes, I am sure." Chidinma snapped, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "I found them with my own eyes. Why else would there be hidden cameras in the house? Why would he install cameras and not tell me?" Tun sat down slowly on his leather couch, rubbing his face with both hands, his mind racing through implications and consequences and potential disasters. He was quiet for a long time, thinking hard. Then he looked up at Chidinma with an expression that made her blood run cold. "If he has cameras," Tun said slowly, carefully, "then that means he has been recording everything. Everything we said. Everything we did. Everything we planned." He paused, letting that sink in. "Which means Adebayo has not been blind this whole time. He has been pretending. This was a trap from the very beginning. He was testing you, exactly like his mother warned him to." And Chidinma, His voice turned hard, angry, accusatory. You failed the test. We both did. Chidinma felt like she was going to be sick. Actually physically ill. The room was spinning. Her legs felt weak. So what do we do? She asked desperately. What do we do, Tund? If he knows everything, he could go to the police. He could have us arrested. Or worse, men like Adebayo do not go to police. They handle things themselves. We could disappear and no one would ever find us. Tund stood up and walked over to a cabinet in his kitchen. He opened it and pulled out a small black bottle. The kind that medicine comes in, the kind that looks completely innocent. He held it up so Chidinma could see it clearly. This is poison, Tund said, his voice steady and cold, devoid of all emotion. It is called Compound 1080. It has no taste, no smell, no color. You can put a few drops in tea, in soup, in anything liquid. Within 2 hours, the heart stops. It looks exactly like a natural heart attack. Even an autopsy would not detect it unless they were specifically looking for it, and no one will be looking because he is 65 years old and blind and stressed. A heart attack would be completely expected. Chidinma stared at the bottle like it was a venomous snake about to strike. Tund, you are talking about murder. You are asking me to kill my husband. To kill the father of my children. Well, one of them anyway. You are asking me to become a murderer. I am asking you to survive. Tund shot back, his voice rising, his patience clearly wearing thin. Do you think Adebayo is just going to forgive you? Do you think he is going to let you walk away after everything you have done? After you betrayed him, lied to him for years, made him raise children that are not his, planned to murder him. He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. Chidinma, if we do not do this, if we do not act right now, we are finished. Both of us. You will lose everything. The house, the money, the lifestyle you have built. You will go to jail. You will rot in a Nigerian prison where women like you do not survive. Is that what you want? Chidinma stood there, her mind spinning, thinking about everything she stood to lose. The mansion in Banana Island. The cars. The shopping trips to Dubai. The respect. The status. The luxury. The life she had built on lies and betrayal. If Adebayo exposed her, it would all be gone. Vanished. Like it never existed. She would have nothing. Be nothing. Her entire life would be destroyed. And then she thought about Nigerian prison. About the stories she had heard. About what happens to women in those places. About how beauty and status mean nothing behind those walls. She could not let that happen. She would not let that happen. Okay, Chidinma finally said, her voice barely a whisper, her soul officially sold. I will do it. Tund smiled, a cold, satisfied smile, and kissed her forehead like she was a child who had finally learned an important lesson. Good girl. Tomorrow morning. Adebayo always asks for tea in the morning, right? Chidinma nodded numbly. Perfect. Put 5 drops in his tea. Give it to him. Make sure he drinks all of it. Then it is done. Within 2 hours, he will be dead. You will be a grieving widow. And once the inheritance is settled, once you have control of everything, we will be together. Free. Wealthy. Untouchable. The next morning, Thursday, November 16th, 2023, Adebayo woke up as usual. He went through his routine mechanically, like an actor who had performed the same role 1,000 times. Bandages over his perfectly functional eyes. Stumbling carefully as he made his way downstairs. The performance was flawless. He sat in his usual chair in the living room and waited. His heart was pounding, but not from fear. From something else. Anticipation, maybe. Or grim satisfaction that his worst suspicions were about to be confirmed. Chidinma, he called out, his voice carrying through the mansion. Can you make me some tea? Please. There was a pause, a long, heavy pause that seemed to stretch into eternity. Then Chidinma's voice came from the kitchen, strained and tight, like a rope about to snap. Yes, Adebayo. I will bring it now. Adebayo sat there, his enhanced hearing picking up every sound from the kitchen. The kettle boiling. The clinking of cups. The opening of cabinets. And then, so faint most people would have missed it, the sound of a small bottle being opened. The sound of liquid being poured. Drop. 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 5 drops, exactly as Tund had instructed. Adebayo's jaw clenched, but he forced his face to remain neutral, blank, the face of a blind man waiting for his morning tea. A few minutes later, Chidinma walked into the living room carrying a cup of tea on an expensive silver tray. A tray that had been a wedding gift, ironically, from Adebayo's late first wife's family. Her hands were trembling slightly, but she forced a smile onto her face, that practiced smile she had perfected over 11 years of lying. "Here you go, my love," she said, her voice almost breaking on the word love. "Your tea. Be careful, it is very hot." Adebayo reached for the cup slowly, his movements careful, deliberate. He wrapped his fingers around it, feeling the warmth. He brought it close to his face as if he was about to take a sip. And then he stopped. "Chidinma," Adebayo said, his voice calm and steady as a judge pronouncing sentence. "Yes, take a sip first." Chidinma froze. Her entire body went rigid like she had been struck by lightning. The color drained from her face. "What?" "I said take a sip of the tea. You made it. So drink some." "Adebayo, why are you asking me to do that?" Her voice was rising, panic creeping in. "Are you questioning me? Your own wife." Adebayo's voice remained calm, but there was something beneath it now, something cold, something deadly, something that made Chidinma's blood run cold. "I am not asking you, Chidinma. I am telling you. Take a sip." "Henry, I am your wife. How dare you accuse me of anything? I have been taking care of you ever since you lost your sight. I have been by your side. This is how you thank me." Adebayo set the cup down on the table very carefully, very deliberately. Then slowly, so slowly it seemed to happen in slow motion, he reached up and pulled the bandages off his eyes. The medical tape came free. The white gauze unwound. The carefully constructed lie literally unraveled. And there were Adebayo's eyes. Clear. Sharp. Seeing everything. Seeing her. Chidinma gasped, stepping backward, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with absolute terror. "Adebayo," she whispered, and her voice was the voice of someone who knew they had been caught, knew they were finished, knew their entire world was about to collapse. Adebayo looked directly at her, with eyes that could see perfectly, eyes that had been seeing perfectly this entire time, and spoke with a voice that carried the weight of 11 years of betrayal. "Take a sip of what you just gave me." "Adebayo, please, I can explain." "Explain what?" His voice rose now, all the accumulated rage of weeks of deception finally breaking through. "Explain why you just tried to poison me? Explain why you have been sleeping with another man in my house? Explain why baby Adana is not my daughter? Explain why you have been lying to me for 11 years. Chidinma started crying, great, heaving sobs, mascara running down her face in black rivers. "Please, Adebayo, please. I am sorry. I was scared. Tun told me to do it. It was not my idea. Please, I am begging you. I will change. I will be better. Please do not do this." Adebayo stood up from his chair, his full height towering over her, and she stumbled backward in fear. "Answer me one question, Chidinma. Just one question, and I want the truth." His voice dropped to a whisper that was somehow more terrifying than his shouting. "Are those boys my sons? Chukwemeka, Alyawazi, and Amarachi, are they mine?" Chidinma looked up at him, tears streaming down her face, her mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. "Answer me," Adebayo shouted, his voice echoing through the entire mansion. "Yes. I mean, Chukwemeka is yours. He is definitely yours. But the others?" Her voice broke completely. "Alyawazian and Amarachi, they are not. I am so sorry. I am so sorry." Adebayo staggered backward like someone had punched him in the chest with a sledgehammer. He sat down heavily in his chair, his face in his hands. And then he did something Chidinma had never seen before in their entire marriage. He cried. Great, shuddering sobs racked his body. Tears rolled down his face, tears of rage, betrayal, grief, loss. Out of 4 children, only one was his. Only Chukwemeka, sweet, loyal, devoted Chukwemeka who loved him unconditionally. Only he carried Adebayo's blood. The other 3 were Tun's children. 3 children he had raised, loved, provided for, sacrificed for, all based on lies. Adebayo sat there for what felt like an eternity, crying silently, his heart breaking in ways that could never be fully repaired. Then he wiped his face, picked up his phone, and made a call. "This is Chief Adebayo Okonkwo," he said into the phone, his voice cold and emotionless, drained of all feeling. "I need military personnel sent to my address immediately at Banana Island. I also need you to pick up a man named Tun Bakare. I will send you his details now. And make absolutely sure, you beat him first. Beat him until he cannot stand. Then arrest him." Within 30 minutes, soldiers arrived at Adebayo's mansion. Not police officers, military personnel. Nigerian army. The kind of men who do not ask questions, who follow orders, who can make problems disappear. Adebayo had connections most people could only dream of. He had survived Nigerian business and politics for 40 years by knowing exactly who to call and when to call them. The soldiers were not there for Chidinma. They were there for Tund. They went straight to his Victoria Island apartment. They dragged him out in handcuffs while his neighbors watched in horror and curiosity. And before they threw him into the military van, they beat him. They beat him exactly as Adebayo had instructed, until he could not stand straight, until his face was swollen, until he understood, truly understood, what it meant to cross a man like Chief Adebayo Okonkwo. Adebayo called his lawyer immediately. Within hours, every single property, bank account, investment, and asset that had Chidinma's name on it was transferred back to him. He took everything. Everything except baby Adana. "Take your daughter and leave," Adebayo said to Chidinma, his voice ice cold, empty of all emotion. "You can have her, but you will never step foot in my house again. You will never see my sons again. I am sending you back to the streets where I found you, back to nothing. You are dead to me." Chidinma collapsed on the marble floor, crying and begging. "Adebayo, please. Where will I go? What will I do? I have nothing. Please do not do this to me. Think of the children." But Adebayo turned his back on her and walked away. He had his security escort her out of the mansion with nothing but the clothes on her back and baby Adana in her arms. The only child that was actually hers, the only thing she could keep. But the three boys, Chukwemeka, Oluwaseun, and Amarachi, he kept them all. Even though he now knew that only Chukwemeka was his biological son, Adebayo had raised those boys. He had fed them, clothed them, loved them, taught them, protected them. And he was not going to punish them for their mother's sins. They were innocent. They had done nothing wrong. And they deserved a father who would love them regardless of blood. That evening, Adebayo sat alone in his living room. The same living room where he had pretended to be blind, where he had sat through weeks of deception, where his entire world had collapsed and rebuilt itself. His phone rang. It was his mother, Mama Folake. "My son," she said softly. "I heard what happened. Are you all right?" Adebayo let out a shaky breath. "You were right, Mama. About everything. You saw what I refused to see. I should have listened to you from the very beginning. I wish I had been wrong," Mama Folake said quietly. "I prayed every day that I was wrong about that woman. But at least now you know the truth. And you can move forward. The ancestors have protected you." "Thank you, Mama," Adebayo said, his voice breaking. "Thank you for trying to warn me, for trying to protect me when I was too blind to protect myself." After he hung up, Adebayo sat there in silence for a long time. He thought about everything he had lost, his wife, his trust, his peace of mind, his faith in love. But he had also gained something valuable, the truth. And sometimes the truth, no matter how painful, no matter how devastating, no matter how life-destroying, is the only thing powerful enough to set you free. The moral lessons, what this African folktale teaches us. This story, this modern African folktale set in contemporary Nigeria but echoing wisdom passed down through countless generations, teaches us several profound lessons. 1. Trust but verify. Our ancestors said, "Trust everyone but brand your cattle." Even in marriage, even in love, wisdom requires awareness. 2. Listen to your elders. Mama Folake saw the truth immediately because she had lived long enough to recognize patterns, to see through masks, to understand human nature in ways that books cannot teach. 3. Not all that glitters is gold. Beauty, charm, and performance do not equal character. Chidinma was beautiful, but her soul was rotten. 4. The truth always comes to light. African proverbs tell us, a lie may take care of the present, but it has no future. Eventually, always truth emerges. 5. Blood is not the only thing that makes family. Adebayo kept all three boys because love transcends biology. Real fatherhood is about who raises you, not who conceived you. 6. Greed destroys. Chidinma had everything: wealth, status, security, children. But greed for more, for Tund, for absolute control, destroyed her completely. 7. Test before you trust completely. This is controversial, but the story teaches that sometimes, especially when warning signs appear, it is wisdom to verify loyalty before giving complete power. If you made it to the end of this African folktale, this story of betrayal, deception, wisdom, and justice, then you understand why YouTube storytelling will never die. Because stories like this, stories that combine ancient African wisdom with modern reality, that teach moral lessons through compelling narrative, that make us question our own relationships and choices, these stories are eternal. They are as old as humanity itself. They will survive as long as human beings exist. My chief story analyst said YouTube storytelling is dying. He could not have been more wrong. What dies is lazy storytelling, generic storytelling, boring storytelling. But this, traditional African folktales reimagined for modern audiences, packed with wisdom, entertainment, moral lessons, and algorithmic optimization. This is the future. This is what will dominate. This is what will go viral. This is what will change the internet. What did you learn from this story? Drop a comment below and tell me. Did Adebayo do the right thing? Should he have kept all 3 boys? What would you have done in his situation? Do you know anyone like Chidinma in real life? And subscribe because part 2 is coming, where we discover, is Chukwemeka really Adebayo's son? Or was Chidinma lying about that too? What happens to Tund in military custody? Does Chidinma try to get revenge? How do the boys react when they discover the truth? The story is not over. Traditional African storytelling never dies, it only evolves. Thank you for watching and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Remain blessed.